In the grand arena of life, every man faces his own unique seasons, times of triumph, struggle, growth, and reflection. Your legacy is forged not just by the challenges you face, but by the quality of your thoughts and actions. Welcome to the Legacy Podcast with Ernest Wood, where we explore the path to true happiness, enduring legacy, and becoming the man you're meant to be.
Hey, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. Today I have a great guest. I think he perfectly aligns with what I'm trying to do here. My saying is, everybody has a different definition of their legacy, their happiness. And what he does, he helps my men find their purpose. And at the same time, he also helps women feel peace. So I'm going to let David, chat about what he does, and then we'll just go through, ask some questions. I know he's going to have some fantastic advice and tidbits for our guys who listen. So David, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate the invitation. Glad to be here. Yeah, you said, I help men find purpose and help women feel peace. Very intentional about those words, by the way. The masculine finds, the feminine feels, which is, we're going to unpack all of that, I have a feeling, as we go through this. So I own and operate, along with my gorgeous and radiant, beautiful, and all the wonderful, wonderful aspects of my wife, Paige. We help men, women, and couples all over the planet begin to identify and validate and begin to heal their childhood trauma wounding to release them into the relationship and marriage of their dreams. So what we have come to understand is that it is the unprocessed, unresolved childhood trauma, which we all possess, believe it or not. All 8 billion of us possess elements of childhood trauma that is still left unhealed. And so it is the root cause to all of our complexities inside of our marriage relationship. And so we help our clients and the world around us through our social media channels really begin to understand and begin to carve a path toward their healing journey. And it all begins back to healing their wounds from childhood that can bring forward and into the relationship of their dreams.
That's funny you say it, because that was one of the things when I wrote my book. I finally had that epiphany of what was causing me a lot of my issues that I was doing today. How do you start with people like unlocking that? I always say it's like a knot. That's how it was for me. I had a bunch of little knots that I had to untie. For me, I figured it out and I started working on it. But many people get stuck, just get stuck. They don't know where to even begin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is, you use the word stuck, Ernie, and it's interesting to leverage that word because it literally is stuck. So as what we have come to understand is that trauma moving through the body is like moving through a tunnel in a mountain. And we take the car, we take the bus, we take the train through the tunnel. And what happens is that bus, that car, that train gets stuck and it's not able to complete the process and the release of the childhood wound. And so it gets stuck, and that's why we feel stuck. That's why we leverage that type of word. So what we help men and women do is begin to unstuck themselves. Now, I'm not sure that's a real word, but we're going to make it up here, right, Ernie? So we're going to help them unstuck. And the way that we do that is we help them identify the originality of when the wound entered their nervous system as a 3-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as a 12-year-old, as a 15-year-old. Because what's really powerful and why I enjoy this work so much, Ernie, is because I get to be a detective helping men and women find the clues, because they don't have extra clues and there are no missing clues. They have everything within themselves. But I help direct them toward an original moment. That is when that particular wound first entered their nervous system and remained stuck because they didn't have the capacity to process that wound and release it from the body. So what we know about trauma is that it's not what happened to us. It's the fact that that negative energy entered into our nervous system at a moment in time in childhood and wasn't allowed to be released and processed through the body. So that car, that train, that bus got stuck in that tunnel and continues to reverberate, continues to recirculate inside of that tunnel until we address that original wound, begin to release it. And the way that we do that is build a new relationship with that wounded part of us that is still stuck at being 3 or 4 or 7 or 15 years old.
Man, that is it's funny because I use that word funny probably too often, but my son just recently, he's like 28, 29 years old, lawyer, doing fantastic in life. But I just recently found out that he had a trauma against me. And to me, it was like the smallest thing in the world. He decided he was going to stop playing baseball and because he wanted to further his education, and that's how he ended up getting a full ride scholarship. So for me, I was like, okay, no problem, cool, go do that. But I continued coaching baseball with my younger son, and my oldest son thought that I was mad about it, and I held a grudge against him. But in my brain, I was just like, okay, do your thing. I'm going to just continue doing this. But it was one of those, it got him stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they're like minuscule, well, in art, like from the other side, right? It can be tiny, but it's major to that person.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why trauma affects us in many, many, many different ways. So I would imagine the large amount of the population would look at that particular incident and say, well, that's not trauma. That's simply, well, I thought my dad was mad at me. Actually, that fits the definition of trauma, which is an overwhelming of the nervous system. He felt, doesn't mean that you necessarily propagated this, but he felt left out, abandoned, dismissed, diminished. All of these words is what he felt inside of his nervous system, and that built a hardening and then forever succumbed into his nervous system. It hardened into his nervous system as trauma and got trapped. Even though it wasn't, from your perspective, a way in which something tragic occurred, it did interrupt his ability to process and to understand who he is and his relationship with you.
It's all about that perspective, right? And being able to have that empathy, because I think sometimes like when we get further along being an adult and we see somebody react to something that we think is stupid, like somebody will say something and somebody flies off the handle and they go absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. It might just be something that happened a long, long time ago that's still stuck in there and trapped.
Absolutely. You're exactly correct. So when someone is triggered, it's the responsibility of the partner, of a family member, of a spouse, in their healing energy. Now, I've just opened a can of worms, but the most elevated way in which to respond to someone else's trigger is simply to, as we say, hold space, be calm, considerate, compassionate, be open, listen, and be a vessel for them to simply respond. Because, and this is where the other person's entrapped trauma, as they overreact to someone's overreaction. And then we have conflict. And they don't understand why, my goodness, why are you overreacting? Why are you so emotional? This is how men get in trouble with women, right? Why are you so emotional, babe? I don't understand. This is not that big a deal. Yes, gentlemen, those of you that are watching and listening, don't ever say that to your wife. Don't ever say, calm down. Don't ever say, get over your emotions. You're showing too much. No, 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 no. In fact, the feminine is built and energetically through her emotions. If she doesn't express her emotions, she's not a woman. So if you are placating, if you are diminishing, if you are dismissing her emotions, you are dismissing her. That's a little side note. But we have to understand that when someone is triggered, it has nothing to do with us. It actually has nothing to do with what just happened. It has a direct line to an original incident from their childhood. And that trigger is a red light that comes on their dashboard that says, uh-oh, I feel threatened. Uh-oh, I feel dismissed. Uh-oh, I feel less than. I feel diminished, ignored, admonished, abandoned. And that trigger comes forward as a red light. Now, most of us will move through life and say, well, the trigger is their problem. They triggered me. Well, the reality is, Ernie, no one can trigger you. That's impossible. That's a myth. No one triggers you. You're triggered, but it all relates back to an original incident from childhood.
I love that you use the word respond, because that is one of my biggest things that I worked on, and I also teach other people is learn to respond, not react,
Hmm.
right? Response is taking that extra breath or taking that extra half a second, or as you just said, like giving that space. That's the response that is needed. And I did learn that with the wife. I used to be the guy who, she'd yell at me or get mad, and I'd be like, "What the hell? I didn't even do nothing. Like, just calm the hell down." And then, so now what I've tried to do, I'm not perfect at this, is after she gets done, blah, 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 and I go, "Do you feel better?" In like a nice, calm, and concerning way. And it's amazing way that separates them from those, like it almost is like a little block for them. They go, "Oh, yeah, I do actually feel better."
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. She's expressing her emotion as she should. And it really has nothing to do with you. So the element of taking it personal is a big, big, big deal for us men specifically, right? We are taught and trained and we're misinformed on this idea that we are to take something personal. We're to bow up. Someone just offended us. And so we have to protect ourselves. That's actually a tragic trauma wound, is what that is. That's a trauma response, is for us to bow up and react and try to defend ourselves. I often teach this to the men in our programs. We're not to be defending our position. A man in his masculine energy never has to defend his position. He just is. Yeah. So when we become defensive with our wives, we're actually fighting someone who is supposed to be an ally, not an adversary.
Man, I just got done reading The Way of the Superior Man.
Mhm.
Is that a lot of the stuff you say is very similar? Is that one of your go-to books? Do you have men read that? Is
Yeah, yeah. David Data, he's terrific. He's a stalwart. He's a pioneer in our space. There are many different areas in which we agree, and there are many more different areas in which we steer in different directions. But yeah, highly recommend if a man is unfamiliar with masculinity, that's one place to start is to go to David Data's book. Um, I just started reading a book called Iron John. Iron John. It's by Robert Bly. It's a book that's about 20 years old, and it's really I would center in more on that particular resource. Certainly more aligns with my teaching and my coaching and our specific healing modality. Highly recommend that one for all the men that are listening. But yeah, this there is probably just as many elements and ideas and perspectives on what masculine energy is, Ernie, in the world as there are thumbprints. And so it really is it's a matter of understanding, okay, what do we believe masculine energy? Because it's taken a hit over the last 50
oh,
years, if you haven't noticed. So, and it's interesting because there have been two social movements that have happened over the past 50 years that have been incredibly confusing to both men and women. The first was the feminist movement of the 60s and 70s, and it was necessary. It was absolutely necessary for women's voices to be heard. However, what it did is it swung the pendulum violently in the opposite direction and actually took femininity away from women. It didn't add to it. And then the second social movement just happened years ago with the Me Too generation, where again, necessary individuals that were called out for all of the inappropriateness that was being dispelled upon women needed to be done. However, what it did was that then it, in so many ways, brought some emasculation to the masculine, in that we were now scared, we were trepidatious, we were unsure on how to lead, how to win, how to pursue women. And so it has been a incredibly complex and in some ways treacherous journey for us men over the last 50 years. And so we're really in this space to bring true identification of masculinity back to where it belongs.
so true. Masculinity was almost, it's like a poison. Everybody was just looking at it like, if you're a masculine man, you're a jackass, you're horrible, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was taught, like, I mean, it was taught in schools. And even in some ways, I think in the sporting system, where it wasn't win or lose anymore. Everybody just got a appreciation trophy for being there, right? In some ways, that was tearing down the masculinity, and like in the man, and that's how I feel about it. Because as men, we're and you can correct me, but I always feel like we're the builders. We're the ones who create, win, and that's the way the world has been set up, right? And then obviously we have our fantastic counterpart of the women and the femininity, and they work together to build the best overall. But the way it got taken apart, we lost the masculine side of it. And now all of a sudden we just had the feminine side of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, well said. So as we identify in our coaching practice, we look at how trauma affects us in childhood. And what it does is it repels our true core energy. So everyone is born with both masculine and feminine energy. Every single one of us. We all have both masculine and feminine energy. What happens in childhood is when trauma wounding goes left unprocessed and unresolved, it actually can invert our core energy. So when we see men who are living in their wounded feminine energy, they're passive, reluctant, afraid of confrontation, fearful of failure, fearful of rejection. Okay, they're in a passive state. That's actually identified as a man in his wounded feminine energy. Now, it doesn't mean that feminine is weak or wrong. I said feminine energy. This has nothing to do with gender. And so also a man can then grow into his wounded masculine energy, which is often referred to these days as toxic masculinity. We don't use that phrase because it's actually wounded masculinity. So someone who is overbearing, over controlling, who is jealous, who is someone who has to be right, who is addicted and attached to achievement. That's actually wounded masculine energy. So what we want is to begin to realign, and that happens by healing our childhood trauma that puts us back into an alignment within our independent and individual energies.
I was listening to you had a post and it was the golden retriever black cat. And I think that you were just talking a little bit about the golden retriever thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a trendy phrase these days where a man as a golden retriever is a very passive, very playful, wants to have fun, has very little responsibility, is there as this loyal compadre, this loyal partner. Meanwhile, the black cat energy, which again is a trendy phrase, is the woman who is more in her boss babe energy, hyper independent, hyper vigilant, over controlling, overbearing, and by the way, exhausted, burned out, and overwhelmed. So a woman in this black cat energy is what we identify as wounded masculine energy. She is more in that over controlling, overbearing, hyper vigilant, jealous, fearful of making mistakes, etc., that puts her in that dominant energy. And that particular energy will always attract a man in his wounded feminine energy. So that's why we have black cat energy and we have golden retriever energy, and they will always, Ernie, always find each other. They will always be attracted to each other. That's the law of attraction and polarity.
Man, that is really dang. I'm just trying to process that because when you look around in like the world today and you just watch men, a lot of them are like in this little shell, right? Their shoulders are forward, their head is down. They can't even look you in the eye. Like it's I don't know what the right word is, scary. It you know, it's yeah, man, that is I'm just having my little brain is going, wow, that's amazing.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. It's the reality is the reason why a man devolves into a wounded feminine state is because of his unprocessed trauma. And here's what I mean by that. So as a little boy, his voice, his independence was stripped or taken. He wasn't able to make decisions out of agency, sovereignty, and autonomy. He was either over controlled, Ernie, or he was coddled. And either way, either he was spoiled or he was over controlled. So his ability to be decisive, to be powerful, to stand strong, to be devoted, to be protective, to be in a state of leadership was actually denounced, was taken, was stripped. Why? Because of caregivers who are in their own wounding, who weren't comfortable with their own ability to know what healing, healthy masculine to pass on to the little boy. So the little boy, with all of that, moved into adulthood as a man who was now terrified to make decisions, terrified to be strong, because it didn't help him in childhood. He had to become recessive. He had to become passive as a little boy to stay alive, literally. Either stay alive literally or socially or emotionally or spiritually. And so he learned it's safer to be passive. It's safer to allow someone else to take care of me. It's safer to allow someone else to make decisions for me. So, of course, this boy grew into a man, and started looking actually for a partner who would take care of him. And there we have the black cat energy and the golden retriever, or as we say, wounded masculine in the woman, wounded feminine in the man.
Man, that's some of that stuff because I was raised by a single mom. She was like 14 years old when she had me. And that was the big thing. Like, I finally looked in the mirror and I was like, dude, I don't like that guy. He's not a good guy. And I was always searching for like outside happiness, outside affection, attention, whatever it was. And once I started stripping those little and getting unstuck and untying those knots, it started peeling away a lot of that golden retriever. I think I had a little bit of that, or I went the opposite way and I was
Exactly.
like, oh, I'm Johnny Badass,
Exactly.
it's so funny. So what is like one of the, I know there's thousands of questions you're going to ask, but what is like one of the main first questions that we could just ask ourselves and maybe do a little practice or a little exercise to start pushing that truck forward and not be stuck?
Yeah. The first step that we always have folks begin to do, and all of your listeners, those that are watching, the very first thing that you can do is simply acknowledge and be aware of when you feel triggered. And you might be thinking, okay, what does that mean? How do I know that I'm triggered? The next time you feel sad, depressed, rage-filled, when you feel solemn, grieving, self-pity, shame, all of these are actual emotions coming through your nervous system trying to get your attention. And they come forward as triggers. And for us men, we often hear those voices, as we refer to them as parts of ourselves from our wounded past, that say, don't do that. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not making enough money. You don't have a six-pack. You are worthless. Yes. All of those are parts of us. They're not us. They are wounded parts of us that are coming forward to actually, believe it or not, protect us from being hurt further, because it does keep us in a state of familiarity that reverts all the way back to when we felt that familiar state as a little boy. So the first step is to simply say, wait a minute, I feel triggered. And you don't have to necessarily say it out loud, although I do. I've done this work for years myself, and both my wife and I are continuing to do this work, and we'll always do this work. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? So we are continually do this work. And so I've been doing this work for some time, and I'll actually say it out loud. Oh, I feel angry. Oh, I feel pissed. Oh, I feel sad. Oh, I feel hurt. Ow, my feelings hurt. Whatever the case may be. And I acknowledge it. That's the very first step. It's amazing how many of us men never acknowledge. We just go off, right? We get pissed, we scream, we yell, we bitch, we moan, we complain, which, by the way, complaining, gentlemen, is a sign that you are in your wounded feminine energy. And by the way, your wife is terrified of your complaints. If you complain and you don't have a plan, she has to go into her masculine energy to take care of you. Exactly. So it's not that this is a myth that we men are not supposed to express emotions. We are absolutely supposed to express the rainbow of all of our emotion, with this caveat that we have a purpose, we have a plan, we have action steps to move and integrate the healing of that particular complaint. So if we come home and we say, you know what, I had a terrible day, my boss was such and such, and this is what I learned, and this is what I'm going to do about it. When our wives hear that, oh, look out. You may be going straight to the bedroom, gentlemen. You know what I'm saying? Why? It's because she can feel your strength. She can feel your resilience. She can feel your power. She can feel your awareness that you know who you are, because you just identified something that's going wrong in your life, but now you have a plan to move through it.
Yeah. See? That's probably why I haven't been getting any lately, because I've been working on a couple other things, and and my plan is a little AWOL. So I've been trying to dial that in, but that is huge, and you do see that in the world, because I'm gonna go back to like what you said earlier. I always say that we were raised by imperfect parents that were raised by imperfect parents, and it just continually spirals down until somebody finally goes, shit, man, this is wrong. Like there's something wrong here. And I thought I was doing that in a way, but I went overboard. I was like super like my kids weren't allowed to make mistakes. If they brought a B plus home, they were getting chatted. Is that kind of like what you see, like the overreaction from men that kind of
Sure.
they swing their own pendulum, right?
Yeah, it's exactly correct. So we either swing it more to the wounded feminine side, us men, or we swing it the other way toward wounded masculine inside, right? Ultimately, we want to be integrated. We want to be harmonious with our healthy masculine and feminine. So let me speak on that for just a moment. I want to be, Ernie, the vast majority of the time in my masculine. It wasn't always the case. In fact, the first 30 years of adulthood, I was in my wounded feminine energy. In fact, when Paige and I met, she was more in her masculine, I was more in her feminine. This is just 5 short years ago. But because we're doing our individual work, we have now reversed that dynamic. But what most happens is men will see, oh, wait, I don't want that. I want this. I want to be able to be more harmonious, but we don't know how. I don't know about you, Ernie, but I didn't get the course in high school that said, oh, relationship 101, or how to treat your wife when she's upset, or how to raise boys and girls. Like these classes weren't taught. Now they need to be, and our work would certainly like to go there, right? And actually, we are doing that work just for adults, right? And so we have to understand why in the world and what in the world is triggering us, right? So you tapped onto something incredibly important. Because our parents possessed wounds of their own from their childhood. Well, they were operating from their wounded parts and not their self. And so you're exactly correct. Then that just gets passed down over and over and over, generationally, over generation, until someone says no more. And sounds like you are one of those individuals who says no more and will begin to end that generational cycle in your legacy. It's the same for me. Now, I was by far not the perfect parent. I have 3 grown children myself, right? And they will tell you, if they're listening to this, they'll be like, uh-huh, yeah, Dad, we know what you did. Yep, absolutely, of course. And it no longer defines me. I leveraged that in self-pity and shame for a long time because I didn't know any better. But just because I didn't know any better, Ernie, doesn't mean that I am left off the hook. It is my responsibility to heal the wounds that happened 40 and 50 years ago that dramatically affected the choices I made in relationships and dramatically affected the choices I made as a parent as my kids were growing up. And so it's uber important. We don't use our unresolved trauma from childhood as an excuse at all. But we do need to own it. We do need to identify it. It doesn't define us. It actually shaped us to where we are now. And now it's our responsibility to take ownership and make a commitment to our healing moving forward.
That is powerful because I think too many people, if they had that rough childhood or they weren't raised, perfectly, whatever, they all, well, my dad wasn't around. Well, my mom wasn't around. And they want to blame, and it is what it is. Like, and that sounds a little harsh, but it is what it is, man. Like, you can't go back and change that crap. The only thing we can do is move forward, learn from it. It shaped who we are, but it doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
to define who we are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We go even deeper, Ernie, in that we actually have an opportunity. And I'll just highlight one of our clients said this recently. She said, because we coach both men and women, she said, David, for the first time in my life, I've realized that I can reclaim my childhood. It is no longer taken from me. So we actually help our clients do the work of reclaiming their childhood. It's not that we can't do anything about it. That's false. We actually can. We actually can go back and heal the wounds, heal the little boy and the little girl, right? That still is there, feeling the suppression, feeling the hurt, feeling the oppression, feeling the abuse. We can actually go back and build a new relationship with those parts of us that can release us into the here and the now so that we're so much more healthy emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
I had another gentleman on, and he talks about like getting rid of the story, right? Getting rid of your story past. And and it made sense and it makes sense, but it's also you want to heal that story past, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't let the past define who you are because that's what causes all the, like the stress, or the built up tension inside, right? You have to live in that present moment, but you do have to release those stuck feelings and stuck traumas because you're not going to be able to operate at your optimum level until some of those things have been released.
Yeah. And with all due respect to that gentleman, I respectfully disagree. We don't get rid of the stories. We actually lean into them. As I like to say, we don't get rid of our trauma. We actually love our trauma, which sounds crazy, but we actually double down. So those of you that know something about Las Vegas and gambling will understand what I mean when I say double down. We actually want to go into the experience. We want to be with the experience in order to heal it. When we run from the experience, it's describing exactly what you just said. It won't go away. And that's the strategy that so many of us men have resorted to is, oh, I'm just going to stuff it into a box and put it on the shelf, and I think it's going to go away. Time doesn't heal wounds. The work heals wounds. You don't get over it. You don't move through it. You actually face it. And we help you do that.
Do you find a lot of like people's addictions and things are caused by those traumas?
Without question. In fact, we believe that every single dysregulation of the nervous system, which means every physical, emotional, spiritual, and sexual ailment, can all be traced to your unprocessed, unresolved childhood trauma. Everything from chronic back pain, sciatica, impotence, cancer, MS, everything. Now, that's a profound statement. But we believe that the body, to quote Bessel van der Kolk, one of our mentors, amazing, wrote a book several years ago called The Body Keeps the Score. We believe that trauma is entrapped in the body. It is not mindset work. Okay? You don't tell yourself to be more positive. That is a circumvention strategy. That doesn't help. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a lethal wound. Trauma is actually encased, Ernie, in our cells, in our tissues, in our bones, in our muscles. It's actually, that's where it is stored. Well, when we have dysregulation inside of our bodies, what happens? We have physical ailments. We have migraines. We have chronic pain. We have disease. We have, quote, and I'm using quote, addictions. We don't subscribe to the idea of addiction. No one's addicted. Okay. You have trauma wounds that are lending you to use substances or your kids. How many people do you know, Ernie, that are addicted to their children? And taking them to, exactly. So whatever your quote addiction is, whether it's shopping, whether it's cocaine, whether it's alcohol, whether it's busyness, whether it's your job, whether it's money management, right? It's all an unhealthy attachment. And all of that can be traced back to an original wound from childhood.
Yeah, that is what I was, and I was gonna expand on that a little bit. And what I found, what helped me was dialing in my fundamentals, like sleep, breath work, nutrition, hydration, and movement. And when I got those dialed in, because I had a lot of little issues, right? I was knotted up but I found that like I was jacked up because, my sleep was jacked up, but my sleep was jacked up because I missed this. And once I got those dialed in, because I believe like physiology drives psychology, right? I think there's a little bit of kind of what you're saying because
Mm-hmm.
your physiology is totally jacked up because of all these little traumas and different things that are in there. So, like I teach, get those things, and then we can start working on the forgiveness, the empathy, the kindness, and stuff like that. What is your opinion on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we believe that it is a two-prong approach. It is yes and. So we actually believe that all of those strategies, so movement and nutrition and all of that, incredibly uber important. But it's only preparing the body for the real work, for the depth, right? So it is yes and, not first and second, or second and third. It's yes, we must do it all. We have strategies and tactics and processes. People will say, how am I supposed to talk to my wife when she's flying off the handle? Well, I can give you language techniques, I can give you communication styles, but that's not going to heal your trauma. It's only a band aid on a lethal wound. We not only do that in the present, we need to have those types of strategies, but we also need to go to the depths of why in the world you are having struggles with your wife in communication. And that all stems back to each of yours, which, by the way, it is both spouses' responsibility to heal their own wounds. It is not one than the other. And both of you carry wounds. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, and I know obviously you're listening because you're here, if you find yourself complaining about your spouse, it's important to look in the mirror before you look out the window. Because according to the energetic law of attraction and polarity, you are who you attract. So if you're complaining about your spouse, you might as well be complaining about you, because you just didn't end up in this marriage and you're perfect and they're not. No, no, no. You were attracted actually to their wounds, and she was attracted to yours. Believe it or not. That can sound very dysregulating and odd, but it's absolutely true.
So, what would be your advice? Like, this happens a lot is one person finds that they don't like who they were,
Mhm.
or they go on that mission of changing and then the other one feels like, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. And then you start separating, right? Because like you said, they were attracted to those things, and now this
Mhm.
one person is trying to get rip those away.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, that is the course. We always say this, Ernie. We always say, here's the warning label. Now, we do work with married folks. We work with the husband and the wife. That's the ideal situation. But more often than not, we're working with one or the other spouses. And the other spouse is not prepared, not ready, not committed, doing their own thing. What we say is the warning label is be careful what you wish for. Because when you begin to do this profound work, you will change. And your spouse is not on the same trajectory. So the gap is going to widen. Now, that sounds like, why in the world would you tell somebody that? Well, it's because we believe in extreme ownership and radical personal responsibility. Healing journey is not about a marriage. You don't heal, fix, mend, or save a relationship. There's no such thing. You can only heal you. So if you're taking the step forward and making the commitment to heal yourself, it has nothing to do with your spouse. And yes, you're exactly correct. The spouse will begin to see, and the parts of them, the wounded parts of them, will begin potentially to be threatened by the fact that you are changing. And so can be seen as widening that gap. Well, of course, the gap is being widened because you're continuing to heal and they're continuing to stay in the same space. So that's why we have to get incredibly laser focused and incredibly sober that this is an individual journey. But if you're going to choose the sanctity and the preservation of the relationship, you're not going to do the healing that is required in order for you to move forward. And that, more often than not, Ernie, scares people away from this work. Because they say, well, what if I start doing this work and then my husband doesn't? And I often say, I think you just answered the same question. You just answered the question, right? What you're terrified of is losing the relationship. In order to truly heal, you have to be less concerned about the relationship and more concerned about your relationship with yourself. And that is incredibly counterintuitive to so much of the worldly space, so much of the space that says, oh, we're going to marriage counseling. There's no such thing. You can't heal a marriage. You need to do your work and they need to do theirs. And so, in fact, we had a client who just completed some work with us, and she made this incredibly powerful and incredibly challenging decision to complete her relationship based on the fact that she saw that she was no longer in a place where she could continue her healing journey while in that environment. And so we could look at that as, oh, that's terrible, it's sad. For us, we are celebrating. We're celebrating with her because she's making the choice, and the choice is her.
In many ways, like that healing thing, you have to be selfish, right? You have to like you said, man, you can't fix somebody that doesn't want to be fixed or doesn't think they need to be fixed. And if it does come all the way down to the point where you have to terminate the relationship, sometime that's just going to happen. Is there other times where, you do all this work and then you find that it's like that law of attraction, right? Like whatever you put out to the world kind of comes back around to you. And if you're doing all this work, do you find that sometimes that spouse down the road kind of starts swinging a little bit more towards it? Is that like more often than not, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. We've certainly seen it come true. And they can certainly, as I say, one spouse can absolutely inspire. I'm going to say that word again, Ernie. Inspire. Can't tell them, can't control them, right? Haven't we tried? We've tried to control other people, but it's zero for zero. It's never happened. So we can certainly inspire our spouse by doing our work. And we've seen some of that work happen. But more often than not, because they're not integrating at the depths of what we're coaching and teaching, that there is still going to be a considerable gap. Now, we've had folks who one spouse starts working with us, and a month later, the other one comes on board and starts working with us. So yes, we've had that happen, and we absolutely are thrilled when those types of scenarios take place. Yes, ideally we want to be working simultaneously with both the husband and the wife, but it doesn't always happen.
You had a quote in one of your things that I saw. It was heal the man, heal the world.
Hmm. Yeah, boy, we can just stop there, can't we? Yeah,
That, yeah.
absolutely. Well, what I've come to understand is that because of the very essence of the masculine energy being leadership, is what I've come to understand, and this can be somewhat controversial. Men will follow men. Women will follow men. Men will not follow women. Now, does that mean that women do not have inspiration, do not have creativity, do not have brilliance? Of course they do. Absolutely. But my wife and I, for example, are in a polarized relationship where I'm far more in my masculine, she is far more in her feminine, and she wants to follow me. It doesn't mean that she's weak. It doesn't mean that she can't make her own decisions. It doesn't mean that she's not a damsel in distress. She is not a needy, codependent individual. To the contrary, but we have built an emboldened trust between us, and we are in our encased, healthy energies. And she absolutely thrives when I'm in my leadership. She wants to follow that. This is energy. This is not about roles. It's not about gender. And so what we come to understand is that if you begin to heal the man in every family, you will change the world with absolution, because he is indeed leading the family. Now, what often happens is the family will go where he goes, good, bad, or otherwise, as we know. And we can look at all the sources and all the statistics over the years of when dad is absent, right? We can see and we can hear all the things that say, oh, daddy wounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I make the bold statement that says, heal the man, heal the world, I absolutely believe it with all of my heart. And that's why I love the fact that we are coaching about 52, 53% of men in our coaching practice, in our coaching program, which is fairly extraordinary considering we serve both men and women.
I think that pendulum like swung so far and then came back, and now it's kind of it's in that weird little spot. I mean, I don't want to get all political right now, but I think in some ways that we swung so far over here where that away from the masculine energy
Mm-hmm.
that it pushed the world. Yeah, everybody might not like Trump, but he definitely has a masculine energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and even I mean, there's like people like Andrew Tate and those guys. They're grabbing what because of that swing, they're able to grab more of that because people are going, damn, man, we missed that. And then is it going to swing too far that way?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, because that's the way we always do everything in life, right? It's always back and forth, and we can't just stay in that middle spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would make the argument that some of what is seemingly attractive about some of the folks that you just mentioned is actually then has gone too far into the wounded masculine side, where it feels over controlling and too much bravado and too much ego. The taste of masculine, the essence, the smell, the energy of masculine, there are elements there. But true healthy masculine at times has gone far to the extreme to where it's more of the emboldened, over controlling, overbearing masculine energy that can turn into something that is less than what we believe to be true masculine.
It's, I think in some ways, and this might, and people are probably going to not agree 100% with this, but it was controlled by the media and different shit that, I mean, they put crap in our food to ruin our testosterone, right? There's different supplements that's done. They stopped having the winning and losing. And it was all about these, and I could be wrong, but it seemed like they were tearing down the man because like the man does run the family. It does build nations and everything is built off of the man. And then they started, like it became men, the men were just pulled out of the family, and you talked about it, man. Without the man in the family, kids usually have a hard time. I knew I was one of those guys that did not have a dad around, and I went through a lot of stupid shit trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what kind of man I was gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's why I am on this pioneering journey. Journey is to help educate the world, both men and women, on understanding what healthy masculine and healthy feminine is, and that we do need to find this harmony, and that when we do find it, when we do integrate it, we will have the relationships of our dreams. We'll have the marriage that we've always wanted. It will feel and be right. And so often we don't know. We don't know what's right. We can't see it because we haven't been exposed. As my brilliant and beautiful wife quotes, she says, contrast reveals appreciation. Meaning, we cannot appreciate what we don't have until we see a contrast. So I didn't know that I was in my wounded feminine energy for most of my life until I saw a contrast, until I realized, wait, healthy masculine, which I was absolutely ignoring, thinking it was controlling, overbearing, hypervigilant, masculine behavior. I thought that was masculine, and it's not. That is what we refer to again as wounded masculine energy. I want to be in an integrated, healthy power and strength and decisiveness and devotion to protect and to pleasure my wife, to prioritize the life, to find purpose. That is all healthy masculine.
It's like that yin and yang, right? You have to have a
Precisely.
balance to make a perfect ball. You have to have the balance of both, a little piece of both. That I think that's even why they did it, right? Because you have a
Mm-hmm.
little piece of the white and the black and the black and the white and the
Exactly.
full separation. Then the law of polarity, you know, it's going to always attract, and it just if you're giving out the feminine energy, you're going to attract the more masculine. But yeah, I've read a lot of different studies. After I read this law or the way of the superior man, I started going down a couple little rabbit holes on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was so you had a couple books, if you don't mind, would you restate those just so I can get those back out to the reader or listener?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first one is The Body Keeps the Score. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Bessel van der Kolk, who is a pioneer in our space of trauma. Another book is Iron John by Robert Bly. Those are the two that come to mind. There is one of our primary modalities, Ernie, is what we refer to as parts work. And I was referring to a little bit during our conversation, is that we are all made up of a multiplicity of wounded parts. They all come from our childhood trauma. And so parts work is a generic term that was founded by the IFS system, or internal family systems, which was created in the 1980s by Dr. Richard Schwartz. Dr. Richard Schwartz created internal family systems, or to shorten it, IFS. So there is an introduction to that work, which we have all of our clients read as part of their, and this is that book right there by Dr. Richard Schwartz. He's amazing, another pioneer in our field. Highly recommend that particular book as well.
How did you, we're gonna have to probably wrap it up pretty quick,
Yeah,
but what was
absolutely.
your, why did you, like, what made you realize that you were in that feminine or
Mm, yeah,
the retriever?
yeah,
What made you
yeah,
realize that?
absolutely.
What woke
Yeah,
you up?
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when we were introduced, both Paige and I were introduced by who would become one of our mentors. We were in a mastermind coaching self development project and program. And we were first introduced to polarity. Now, I've heard masculine and feminine energy over the years, but really didn't understand what any of that was. And I wasn't exposed to what trauma was. I thought trauma was the big bad wolf. I thought that only certain people experience traumatic events in war, in rape, and incest, and beatings, and abuse, and all the big bad wolves. And actually, to truly understand what trauma was an important journey for me. And some of my mentors, Maston Kipp and Peter Levine, Richard, Stephen Porges, et cetera, et cetera. These are gentlemen and ladies who introduced me into the trauma world and introduced me into the polarity world. And what we have done is we've taken both of those spaces and now we've created our own specific proprietary healing modality. And that's what we work with our clients. So how did I realize it? Being hit over the head, Ernie, and realizing, oh, wait, that's not what I want anymore. It's not working. I've been spending 30 years trying to find a woman who would take care of me, quite frankly. That's exactly what was going on. And boy, why weren't my relationships successful? And so it was very much like many of us men find change is, well, it's not working for me. And someone on the other side maybe is saying, this isn't working for me either. So I better do something. And so Paige and I, in many ways, simultaneously begin to understand that we were inverted. And so we began our own journey, our own individual journey into this healing process to realign our relationship. And now we help others do the same.
That's awesome. I think every man, pretty much every person, but definitely every man, we go through those different seasons of life, right? And sooner or later, we wake up one morning and we go, damn, who is that guy? Like, how did I get to being that guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of us do it like with our emotions. We're angry, bitter. Other ones do it with their weight. Like all of a sudden they can't even see their junk, below their belly. It's crazy how like, and it's all manifested, right? It's all comes from those little wounds that
Mm-hmm.
builds up, and somehow that's what it's showing. It's either we're the grumpy jackass that can't nobody likes, we're the whining bitchy ass dude, or we're the overweight guy who can barely get off the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could even go the other extreme. You're the freaking psycho that's in the gym for 8 hours a day,
Right.
right? You can, and it's not always, it doesn't always have to look unhealthy
Mm-hmm.
because that's where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I looked like I was one damn healthy guy, but mentally, I was pretty unhealthy.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. As I often say, and God bless all the women out there, but this is not a popular statement to many, many women. But I will say, look, here's the deal. A man will never do anything, pause, until he is intrinsically compelled to do so, which is exactly and precisely to your point. We, as men, have to make that decision from the inside out. This is why, ladies that may be listening to this, stop nagging your husband. It doesn't work. Stop telling him what to do. It doesn't work. It only generates a further gap between the two of you. And by the way, if he does succumb to your nagging, if he does become a golden retriever, he's not doing it out of his spirit. He's doing it because he wants to keep you off of his back. And I know that's not what you want. So, yes, a man will never do anything until he is intrinsically compelled to do so. It has to come from him when he gets fed up, as you were just illustrating.
To go along with that point, like when the wife nags and you freaking finally just say, I'm going to do this crap just so she shuts the hell up, you
Mm-hmm.
both lose. like,
Exactly.
right? She loses because she loses a little respect for you, and then
Hmm.
you lose respect for yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. It is a lose-lose for sure.
Man. Hey, give me I always ask uh my wonderful guest, David, if you can give us three quick like nuggets, tidbits, something for the guy who's listening. You gave the one, acknowledge your emotions. That was huge because that is, I think, obviously, like you said, that is the number one thing.
Hmm.
Give me two more if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Take out your wife. And I don't mean as a sniper, men, but date your wife. And those men who are single, you date, you decide, you make the plans, you secure the arrangements, you make the reservation, and you tell her what's going to happen. You give her options, but you tell her this is what's going to happen. You don't ask for permission. You say, babe, I'm taking you out on Friday night. Our reservation is at 6. We're leaving at 5:30. Wear the red dress or the black skirt. You look amazing in both. I look forward to taking you out. Now, I promise you, your wife, she will melt because every woman, very nearly every woman that I know in some way, is suffering from decision fatigue, meaning she has made far too many decisions. She is exhausted, overwhelmed, and burned out, and she simply wants her man to take care of her. So take your wives out, gentlemen. Take your girlfriends out. Go out. Real men, masculine men, gentlemen, do not hang out. Stop hanging out with your wife. Stop hanging out with your girlfriend. Take her out. Show some initiative. Okay. And a second one. Let me think for a second. Here it is. I often am coaching men. I just heard it. Some of the men that I coach, they send me their journal entries verbally. So they'll talk into their phone and then send it to me. And he said this. He said, I remember when you said, David, when I'm feeling like I'm in my wounded feminine, when I feel weak, when I feel passive, when I feel reluctant, when I feel emasculated, is simply to make a decision. And oftentimes men will say, about what? I said, it doesn't matter. Decide that you're going to get up and walk across the room, but make a decision. That is the power of your masculinity. Just choose to step forward. So when you're feeling weak, when you're feeling less than, when you're feeling not the power of your masculine, simply make a decision.
Dude, that is freaking, those are absolutely golden nuggets, man. Those that take out the wife thing, I have to re-implement that into because I
Mm-hmm.
know that is something we've been missing. And then make a decision. That is huge. I learned that a little while back, and it's always anytime that I do it all the time. I just make the decision, and I use like the little rocket ship technique. Uh, anytime I have like a because if we allow that decision to sit there, right, we're gonna get lazy. We're not gonna do it. So I just use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I go do it, whatever it is. And half the time I screw shit up. Like I make some bad, it's not always the best decision, but I made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then in your heart, in your body, and your energy, even
Mm-hmm.
when you made the bad decision, it usually it raises everything up. That's a
Exactly. Yep.
monster one. I'm glad you said that, man. That is so
Mm-hmm.
awesome. How do people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So our website is daring-deeply.com. Make sure you have the dash. Our coaching practice is named Daring Deeply. So it's daring-deeply.com. I'm not sure where
Daring.
daringdeeply.com will take you, Ernie. So it may be a porn site. I don't know, but I'm not responsible if you go there, but it is daring-deeply.com. You can
Yeah,
find
you
us on
you
the
definitely
social.
want to add the dash
Yeah.
because you might
Yeah. You
pull
want
out
to add
some
the dash.
crazy.
I'm not sure. Not sure where Daring Deeply takes you. We're all over the socials. We've got a really robust following on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. We're on YouTube. We have a podcast. So we're all over the place. So just search David Lea. Last name is Lea. Make sure you spell that correctly, or it may take you to some other David Lea. I'm not sure. But again, our coaching practice is Daring Deeply. You can simply Google that and you're going to get all types of complimentary videos from our YouTube channel to the podcast and find some really amazing resources on our website as well.
David, I am so glad you came on the show, man. I thank you for your time. And I know somebody's going to get some good stuff out of this one, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ernie. Thanks for having